Welcome this afternoon. I'm talking to two new friends from Alabama, Wendy and TJ Zito, who have a very similar story, I think, to many of us in Iowa in sanctioning of wrestling. They sanctioned Alabama, or very they helped sanction the sport of wrestling in Alabama, and now are working in production on a movie, Wrestling for Hope. And I'm really excited to meet you both. Excited to get the stories and see just how things go. How is everybody today?
We're so excited. That's what Wendy and I have been
Yeah.
talking about this all weekend, and we're just excited to talk about girls. And this is what we were talking about right before we went on air here. It's just amazing how many of us have worked to grow the sport in different states, and we're seeing these commonalities everywhere. And I think it's important for all of us to start connecting because we can do things state to state to help each other.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Um, because you're new to Iowa, everybody's gonna kind of not know who you are. But could you give us a little background on each of yourselves,
So
and
we'll
then
let Wendy go.
we'll
Wendy
continue.
go first.
Okay, so my background in wrestling is very convoluted. I grew up in Mobile, which is at the bottom of Alabama, and there has never been wrestling as when I lived there anywhere. So my frame of reference for wrestling was AC Slater, Steve on Full House. Like I knew nothing. I knew nothing about wrestling. So when I moved up to Tuscaloosa to go to University of Alabama, I got introduced to wrestling by TJ, and I helped with the team he coached when we were in college and all that. And then when we had our son and he got older, was around it for all of that. And then when he got to high school, the high school he was going to did not have a team. Their team had been gone for years. And we tried to find somebody. We wanted them to start wrestling team back up. And TJ looked at me and he's like, I'm really sorry I'm about to do this. But he was like, we'll coach it. So that's what we did. And specifically for the girls, we originally had wrestling cheerleaders because it was a Catholic school. They weren't real keen on girls wrestling. But I started having more girls come in that said, I don't want to be a cheerleader. I don't want to be a mat maid. I want to wrestle. So we kind of roundabout got it okay because we got the girls on the news about how great it was that they were wrestling, how great it was that they had a girls wrestling team. And then the school couldn't really say no because after all this great publicity, how do you go tell these girls they can't wrestle? So that's how we got in with girls wrestling. And then I got asked by several people in the state, hey, what do you think we could do to get wrestling sanctioned? Nobody had actually asked the state what they wanted. Like, what was it going to take to get sanctioned? And my first question to everybody is like, well, why has nobody asked that question? Why has nobody said, what does the state want? And so I contacted the state and I had tons of people that got angry. Well, who are you to do that? Who are you to take over? To this day, there are still people angry at me for that. And the state said, we need to see more teams. We need to see more teams with girls, not schools with one girl here, one girl there. We need teams. We need matches. We need tournaments. We need to see that this sport is viable. Because at the end of the day, that's what the AHSAA, the head of the state, that's what they want to see, that there's enough for the sport to exist. Because you're not going to sanction something that, is halfway done. So that's what Tisha and I started doing is we started calling schools and saying, hey, you have a tournament this weekend at a girls division. We started calling schools, hey, can we talk to your athletic director? Can we talk to your principal? You have girls at your school that want to wrestle. Can you start a girls team? So we started fighting those battles, fighting with principals that didn't want girls, fighting with schools. Well, we don't have girls that want to wrestle. And I'm like, you want to bet? I know you have girls that want to wrestle. So then from there, because we're both PhDs, it was a lot of research. We went on track wrestling and found out exactly how many schools had wrestling, exactly how many schools had girls, how many had enough to count as a team because you had to have at least six. So how many were actual teams? How many were there in 1A, in 4A, in 6A? And we compiled all the numbers and we said, here, this is what the sport exists as. And they said, okay, this is a great start. Next year, we want to see it more. So we fought and fought the next year, and we brought them those numbers. And they said, okay, let's do it one more time. So we did it again, and we grew it even more. And they said, okay, we're going to put you, what did they call it? Probation?
Probation. We had
It was like a, it
Yeah.
was like a probationary when
and there were conditions, and this is what made a lot of people angry. And if they're watching this, they know exactly who they are, right? And they're going to try to call us out on social media, but I'm fine with that. So what made them angry is up until that point, girls could wrestle boys. And the state of Alabama, this is a deep red state politically. And we were one of the first top 5 states. We're the first 5 states to call that girls play girls sports, boys play boys sports. Because we're at the university level, we knew kind of what was going on in the politics, and we knew that was coming. So we knew where the state was coming from. So the problem in wrestling, we get caught in a lot of our same stories that we tell all the time. Hey, you got to have tougher matches to get better. Hey, you want girls to get better, they got to wrestle guys. We want more matches, girls have got to wrestle. So we get caught in the issue with Alabama is the state wanted to move girls versus girls, boys versus boys.
Well, that was a double-sided coin with it. They wanted to divide it, one, because everything that had passed with the state, but also their point was if it sanctions, it's going to have to split. And I kept telling people that's what sanctioning is. It separates into its own sport. And they're like, well, be able to wrestle the girls and the boys. And I'm like, okay, basketball, you don't have that. The girls don't play basketball with the girls and play basketball boys. If it sanctions, it separates out. And they're like, well, they should be able to wrestle whoever they want all season and then just pick when it gets to state. I'm like, it doesn't work that way in any other sport. Wrestling can't be special. If it's sanctioned, you have to abide by the rules. And it made a lot of people angry. And what's so bad is I was working with the state, so I was putting this out on Facebook. We had a Facebook page where we were sharing all the information we were getting from the state. And then I took the heat for it, like I made these rules. And I'm like, I didn't tell the state what to do here. So then I was getting yelled at. I was being told, well, the AHSAA should be abolished. And I'm like,
they're not abolishing.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just trying to help it get sanctioned.
From a business perspective, and we're both PhDs in communications, and I'm an MBA, and I've got a Fortune 500 background. And I tell wrestling people this all the time. Sometimes in business, it is the right move to shrink to grow. And this is what I had trouble getting people to understand. By reducing and going girls versus girls, yes, for a few years, girls were going to get less matches. And that's tough. When you got girls that were getting 50 and 60 matches, wrestling boys saying, hey, I know you're going to Fargo, I know you're going to Virginia Beach in the offseason, but so I'm a PhD and I'm an MBA, and Dr. Wendy's also a PhD. So one of the struggles that we had getting people to understand was common business theory. So in business, a lot of times, large businesses will shrink so they could grow. You reduce expenses so you could grow bigger on the back end. And so what was happening with the state is they wanted girls wrestling to separate. And what the issue is you had girls that were getting 50 matches. They're wrestling some girls, they're wrestling some guys that were getting 50 matches. When you went girls versus girls, there were maybe only 15 to 20 matches. And maybe some of those matches, quality-wise, were not as good as what they were getting when they were wrestling boys. I recognized that. But by separating girls only versus
you forced it to grow.
You forced it to grow. You had schools that were like, you know what? I wasn't on board when these girls were wrestling boys. But girls versus girls, we're okay with that. We have a lot of private Christian
and I know, like
here,
at our school we were at, I had a lot of girls that they didn't want to wrestle boys, or their parents did not want to wrestle boys. And we also had some parents, they didn't want their boys wrestling girls.
We had some schools that forfeits against our girls that were in the starting lineup. And I even saw where out of state, I think it was Pennsylvania, they were using that as a strategy against the Catholic schools. They would put girls in there to beat them in the dual matches.
And the guys would forfeit.
Yeah. And so for girls wrestling to grow, it had to be girls versus girls only. So we had to shrink the match count to grow it, because at that point, more schools came on board. And then the existing schools that we had, they grew the number of wrestlers they had. The girls are the best salespeople I've ever seen, man. They put the feet on the street. They sell the story. They ask for referrals. They do everything in sales that we ask at the corporate level. And the girls, that's the problem I have with the politics in this. Is the politics is we got a lot of people running around that want to take credit. Who cares who takes credit? Let's give the credit to the girls, right? Did we have a hand? Sure. Were there other people in Alabama that were working? Sure. Just like in Iowa, I bet there's 1,000 people. Who cares who takes credit? at the end of the day, man, the girls have built an industry. Now let's be there to support it. I get
It's
like, there's been challenges, like there wasn't a girls' state tournament. So so we were in a meeting, and this is when Dr. Wendy first took over his head. It was right around the same time, and they were saying, well, hey, we don't have a girls' tournament. So I was like, well, let's do one. They're like, oh, we can't do it this year. I'm like, why not? So we don't have a location. I said, give me 24 hours. So Dr. Wendy and I, besides coming from a business background, we're also from entertainment, and we'll talk about that with the movie later on. But the old saying with Dan Gable, once you've wrestled, everything else is easy. Well, we were actually professional competitors on the ballroom dance circuit as well, and
years
ago, and we have held national events, so we know something about putting together special events. So what I told him, give me 24 hours. I called my city council. I called my old high school. Within 24 hours, I had a location. Within 48 hours, we put together the very first girls' state high school wrestling championships here in Alabama. We created an event. So we borrowed from our performance background. We took pink LEDs. We lined the mats.
I brought my DJ equipment.
And the best thing in the world and the worst thing in the world happened. Track wrestling went down. So we had to run it old school on poster. So that created an opportunity. They threw me the microphone. I got to announce every single girl coming to the mat. And when I did it, it's not like
what's funny, we still run into girls. She's like, you announced me at the first girls' state. Like, there's girls that still remember it.
I hyped it the best I could every single match. And then in the finals, we did, color commentary. So live, because we had a lot of people there that didn't understand the sport, because we got it on the news. We got it on TV. We had the TV there live that was there. We had some podcasts that were there. So, I was hyping it, and I was trying to announce the score, how they scored, when they stepped off the mat, getting the crowd going. We had the wave. Remember, we ran and got the wave going. We rock you.
Boys with the letters on their chest. They had the face paint. It was an awesome day. It was fun.
An event. And I'll tell you about that. One of the things that I tell people is something like a state tournament, it should feel special, especially the first girls' state. I thought it had to feel and look different. It needed to be an event. We see like Real American Freestyle, they get that. They get that merger of where wrestling and entertainment meet. Producer Eric Bischoff that came from WCW and WWE, he gets that. He gets where entertainment and wrestling merge. So we see them following some of those same ideals that we've been pushing with the LED lights. And I think one thing I noticed about girls wrestling that day is that I saw the sport emerge right in front of my eyes. It was a different product. A lot like when you watch UFC, you want to call it the Ronda Rousey effect, right? It was a different product. I've been around this sport since 1989, man. The first days that I stumbled into the mat as a 7th grader, right? I've seen, everything out there. But girls wrestling, it was different. I saw girls using creativity, girls with that were very flexible.
Hitting splits on the mat.
Girls hitting splits to get out of cradles.
I mean, it was more than just the moves. It was so different that day. You had girls from completely different schools taking selfies together, trading their Instagrams. They were wrestling each other and then hugging when they got off the mat. So
sportsmanship.
It was amazing how they came together. I mean, they knew they were doing something cool that day. They knew it was different. And we still have girls that come up to us today that are like, that was the most amazing day of my entire high school career. Like, that was the coolest day ever.
It sounded too millennial, but there was a vibe.
It had a different feel that day.
Electricity that you could cut with a knife, man. You could just
the state took over the next year, and it became every other state tournament.
It
was great, and we enjoyed doing it to help the girls, and that's the thing that I disagree with a lot of people in the state, because there's so many people that claim they're there to support the girls, but they're more concerned with getting the accolade for helping the girls. They want to scream with posters, let her wrestle and all that, but they're not really looking at what it means for the girls and what wrestling means to girls. It's such a hard fight for girls to get on the mat. It's such a hard fight for girls to be respected on the mat. And all of that makes it different for a girl. Boys, they've had boys wrestling for years. They don't have to fight to be on a wrestling team. They don't have to fight to be accepted on the mat. And, I know we're kind of waiting to talk about the movie, but as we started writing the movie, that's the things I started hearing from girls. I started going on TikTok and listening to girls talk about wrestling. We started talking to girls in person, and the things they deal with are so different. You have girls that have told me how many disgusting DMs they get from guys sexually harassing them, their sexuality being questioned.
Practice partners taking cheap shots, or
having to practice with a boy, be it their team or club, and being harassed on the mat too.
Stories that we've gotten since we started the movie, people sending us messages that we thought we knew a lot about girls wrestling because we worked in it for 6 years. So we thought we knew a lot. And in the past 3-4 months since we announced everything, we have heard from people across the country, from California, New York, Pennsylvania, Iowa, right? Giving you all a shout out there. We've heard from everybody. And the stories girls have sent us, I was like, man, we don't know what we don't know. And then on top of that, one thing Wendy's leaving out too is she was the first girls coach in Alabama to sit a chair solo at Girls State.
And that was hard too. That was one thing. When we started the team, I was the only woman coach in the state. And that was the hardest struggle for me. I was getting chewed out by male coaches. I was being told I didn't belong. I was called little lady and little woman and all that. And I wasn't being respected as a coach. Be heard as a coach. So when we got to that first girls' state, and I got to see, he had to go announce. So solo.
Sorry, Dr. Coach Wendy, you go do your thing.
It's awesome. Yeah. I love being the one that was there for my girls. And I had a coach that after we got done wrestling came to shake hands in the middle of the mat. And he said, "Where's the real coach?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Where's the head coach of the school we were at?" And I said, "I'm right here." He goes, "No, where's TJ? Where's the real coach?" And this man, over 6 feet tall, said,
I'm going to start with that. Can I stop you right there? Let's actually talk about that.
So, man.
I just had this conversation, Coach. Well, when I met her, her name was Alana Vederick. She's now Alana Warren. She's All-American. She wrestled for a large school team in Iowa against boys. Made varsity lineup. Very good wrestler. Went to college. Wrestled at Midland University in Fremont, Nebraska. Believe 2 or 3 time All-American. Now runs the girls program in Norwalk, Iowa, where she was from. And her husband is her assistant, very similar to you. And we just had this conversation where officials would go past her and ask her husband the question. When they go to the table, they're looking to her husband, and her husband's very good about saying, "No, that's, you got to talk to the coach." And a profound thing that I think her husband said, you fought 10 years ago for all these girls, these 3,600 girls in the state of Iowa that are wrestling in the high school. You fought and paved that path for them. Now it's your job to pave that path for the coaches. And we're starting to see it. We're starting to see it.
Y'all are ahead of us in Alabama. We are just now getting girls that are at that college level and that are starting to wrestle in college. And I was just having this discussion with a coaching friend of mine the other day. Just because they're wrestling in college doesn't mean they're going to come back and be a teacher. It doesn't mean they're going to come back and be a coach or a club coach. So we still have an infrastructure issue to where we've got to get more girl refs. We've got to get more girl coaches. Now, what we've got to do, and this is hard for us as wrestlers because we want to believe only a wrestler can train a wrestler. That's how we're in. You can't learn from YouTube. You know how we are, man. This is how we do things. And so like Dr. Wendy, she was from dance. And even though she was around when I was in graduate school volunteering at Tuscaloosa County High, she was around the mats. It was when we were in youth. We have a Hall of Famer here in the state of Alabama. His name is Steve Gadosh, and he's the winningest coach in all of Alabama. And he's an older coach, but he looked at her. He said, "You're a dancer." He said, in Georgia, and he said, "That's the country, not the state." That's his tagline. That's Georgia. That's the country, not the state. They train their wrestlers in dance. They train them in gymnastics
before they get to the mat.
Wrestling. He said when they're in the youth. So he said, "You are now Dr. Coach Wendy." He dubbed her Dr. Coach Wendy. You are Coach Wendy. You're Coach Wendy. I want to teach these kids to stretch.
Yeah, but he brought me in. He had me doing handstands and cartwheels and rolls. to get the kids used to moving. And it was also a fun way for the kids to warm up and stuff.
Yep.
But to this day, he still takes ownership of returning the sport.
Coach K. So we love the man.
It was great. It got the kids moving. It got them, the flexibility, the motion, all of that. And there's still kids today that are juniors and seniors in high school that are like, I remember you teaching me how to do handstands and all that. And I always made fun of them because they would always complain when we would have to stretch. And I'm like, funny, when I do this with a room full of girls, they don't say a word, but y'all whine and cry over having to stretch. But it's fun.
We laugh with Coach Gadosh all the time. But he had that knowledge of in Russia and in Georgia, this is the way they do things. We should be doing it here this way. And he spotted she had a talent that was from outside the industry, and that's something we don't always do in wrestling. We don't look at the talent from outside of our industry and go, can we work that in? And we have a lot of talented coaches from other sports that we could bring in as girls coaches. There are lacrosse coaches. There are girls volleyball. There are different sports, softball, that maybe we could bring them in. They may not know everything on the mat, and we may have to teach them on the mat.
But you can learn. One day when we started our team, I took 30 blast doubles from our heavyweight in one day, and she came at me like a freight train. But I did it. I got on the mat, I wrestled with our girls, and I learned.
Club that summer, man, 100 degrees in Alabama. She's out there sweating in the club room and shooting high crotches, and she's.
But I think would be willing to get in there and work with the girls and learn. And trust me, if wrestling had existed where I lived when I was younger, I would have gladly done it. But a lot of us, the age we are, didn't have that opportunity. Wrestling for women wasn't, and girls wasn't a thing back then in most areas, especially in Alabama.
The next Olympian could be out at a 3A school in Alabama that doesn't have wrestling right now. And it's our responsibility as an industry to go find that talent
and keep spreading the sport.
Yeah, get it at the high school level, get them out to the clubs. And that's the message I try to tell people is through our own arrogance, we're not doing enough outreach. We're not calling these schools. Man, if we were to call these, one of the things that we're not doing as an industry is we're not making the phone calls. We want to complain. Oh, the state made this decision. All they care about is football. Well, you know what? The state made it. We have two choices now. We can complain about what the state did, and we can bomb it out and try to prove that the state's stupid, or we could go grow the sport. We could call that 3A school and go, okay, we want you to. And here's a lot of times you can add girls wrestling before the boys. There's a lot of schools that need more girls sports. And we're seeing this at the collegiate level too, that a lot of times you can lead in with the girls and get the girls program first and then get the boys program on the back end. So a lot of colleges are smartening up to that. They're getting the girls in because they can get the funding for the girls, same mats. And once you've already got the girls in, then get the guys. So we're seeing that at the high school level. If we lead in, that could be the lead in, man. You get these 3A, these small schools going, and this is where it's profitable for the clubs. The clubs are for profit for the most part. If you get the in-school girls interested, then you sell the story about club and going to national tournaments and growing and things like that. You create more business for the clubs. So it's crazy to me that the schools and the clubs don't work together. I don't know how it works in other states, but a lot of times the politics and the egos get in the way of growing the industry. So bringing more girls coaches in that maybe don't come from our sport, we know a lot about the mats, but you know what we don't know a lot about is girls. And so sometimes
for girls overall, it's different. Girls move different. Their center of gravity is different. Their challenges with making weight are different. And I think a lot of male coaches glaze over that. So having women coaches in the room with a girls team, to me, is extremely important. Because I know for us it was, because there's some things a girl does not want to talk to her male coach about.
They come to me about like that, Dr. Wendy. We're gonna go,
young girls, there's just some things they don't want to talk to their male coach about. So I think for girls to be comfortable and for girls to feel supported, there's got to be growth in female coaches in the sport.
Let that be a librarian that wants to come in, a team mom, anybody. We've just got to reach within our and pull some of these outsiders in, and people fall in love with our sport. We fell in love with our sport. We forget that. We've all been in it for so long, we forget why we love this sport. And I think it's okay to go and bring another adult in that is not from it and say, here's the greatest sport in the world for young people, and we want to utilize your talent because we recognize them, and we want to teach you what we know and combine with what you know.
All you gotta do is be willing to learn.
Willing to learn. And as coaches, we know this. We don't know how to coach. We want to say we do. We want to say we know everything about the sport, but we don't. We're always learning something, whether it's a new technique or whether it's how to motivate a kid. And with guys, it's not always what you say, and it's not always how you say it. That's what, let's speak softer to the girl. It's not that. When you're looking at leadership, and this is something that even on the MBA level, we write academic papers about, on the PhD level, leadership is not always about softening your voice. It's about the approach and the framework of how you run a practice, how you design a practice, because as coaches, we all say the same thing. Well, the mat's tough and it's equal opportunity. The mat, it doesn't matter whose shoulders go down, and I'm going to treat everybody the same, just like the mat. Well, if you don't recognize that girls are different than boys, then you're kind of being ignorant because they have different strengths. We cannot train a guy and a girl the same because that's our system.
And that's not saying girls aren't tough and girls can't handle it. But one of the things I always tell people is, you've got these male coaches that are going to scream and yell and, everybody deserves to be treated tough. And I don't advocate for anybody demeaning and, hazing kids and stuff like that. But also with girls, if these male coaches from an early age are screaming at them and demeaning them and all that, you're teaching them that it's okay for a man to treat them that way, and when they get older, they're going to accept that treatment from men in other areas of their life. So to me, for girls, you need those women coaches to come in so that they're not getting used to a male coach screaming and hollering and treating them that way, so that moves on with them. A woman coach approaches it differently than a male coach does. I'm not saying we're softer spoken, because I guarantee you I have yelled and gotten after some kids and I've let them have it, but it comes off different than a male coach does, and like I said, I never advocate for demeaning a kid, hazing a kid, calling them stupid, anything like that. But that doesn't mean you can't teach the kid. That doesn't mean you can't discipline a kid. You can't shape them into a great wrestler, but you don't have to do it through tearing them down to nothing.
And that's our thing, man. We say, we tear them down to build them back stronger. We've subscribed to that for so long. This generation coming up, and we're seeing it in the military that's making changes. We're seeing it as we're working. We consult with a lot of emergency, a lot of fire, a lot of police, a lot of big business. And a lot of the movement that's coming in through academia right now is this different generation. They are visual, and they're being led differently than how you and I probably learned. You and I, my coach, I had an old school coach, wrestled for Auburn back in the day with
Stone.
My other coach wrestled for J. Robinson Soda. So you can imagine the approaches that I came with. I learned the hard way, right? But that was our generation. We accepted that. This generation coming up, they accept leadership differently. That doesn't make them weak. It just means they have leadership the way they.
And a lot of them, when you start that aggression, they shut down. They aren't going to learn anything because they shut down, and they block everything off. And that we see that when we coach with the boys and the girls. Kids will shut down when they're faced with that level of aggression, and you just have to work differently with kids now. And I think part of it, a lot of kids, when the pandemic hit and all that, they socially got behind to a degree, and putting them in those hard, aggressive situations like that, a lot of them don't know how to cope with some of that. So it's really made this generation so entirely different in how you have to approach them, how you have to coach them. And that's not, like I said, that's not to say you have to be soft and gentle parent.
That's not saying that.
Coaching has got to work to the kids. It can't just be the same fire and brimstone we all grew up with.
And I think as we look at female leaders, that's something that Dr. Wendy and I were talking about the other day too, is that female leaders need to, you were talking about, embrace their natural, don't try to repeat the way they were coached. Well,
Well, that what I told TJ is when we were in coaching, I felt like I had to take on a very aggressive, almost masculine approach to it instead of getting to coach a lot of times the way I wanted to and the way I naturally wanted to coach these kids, because wrestling innately is a very masculine sport, very aggressive sport. And if you don't go into that vein with it, a lot of times you do get seen as weaker. So I had to be a version of myself that I didn't always like because that was the only way I got listened to. So
Yep.
yeah.
it took a little while for these coaches to go like, hey, she can really organize those quad matches better than we did.
So
I became the queen of lineups.
let's go back a little
Yeah.
bit and let's unpack some of this. And let me because you're in a different spot than we are in Iowa. And I've done some things that when you're talking about how do we get more female coaches, how do we get more female officials, these are things that we've been doing. These are
Oh,
things
great.
that we have. So I'm going to start with female officials. Uh, Women's Officials Network is a group of officials across the country. They have a Facebook page, they have Instagram. It's
Join that.
it's
Yeah.
it's built of all female officials. Nadine, if you've ever Nadine Johnson, one of the first officials in Iowa. She was a mat maid at a school. She loved wrestling. She started officiating. She learned that. She goes around. Now she lives in Colorado and still travels. She does the Iowa State tournament every year.
Oh, that's
She's done
cool.
the boys state tournament. She's done uh, 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 Virginia Beach. She's done all the large national tournaments. I'm not saying she's the head of it, but she's the one that I know the best. So that would be anyone in your area, and I guarantee that there's someone that they could get to come to Alabama to do some officials clinics.
Oh,
And
that would be
that's
great.
we
Amazing.
did that at our high school. I ran my youth tournament, my girls' youth tournament. I had Nadine come, and we got 5 high school and college girls certified to be an official that day. I
That's
don't know.
great.
Yeah, so there's
We
there's some
we
things
have a
there.
few. We've got some refs' daughters that wrestled that, and we have a few
Yeah.
ex
We have
wrestlers
a
that are
few
doing.
girls that have
It's
recently
true.
graduated that are starting to get into officiating. So we're starting to see a few.
Lena
Yep.
Johansson, 4-time state champ.
Yeah.
She's a ref now. We're
Lexi is.
yeah,
A lot of them right now are they're reffing at the
college. They're
youth
college
level,
students, so they're doing it part time, and
and
but
they're getting into it.
we're
But
seeing it. But that's a great resource. So Jeff Saxon is down here, one of the head refs in Alabama, does a great job, and he's been a big supporter of girls wrestling. He refed at the first girls state tournament, and man, that's 48 hours. We put that together. He had our team of refs, and they did a tremendous job. So they've actually been big supporters, and
Yep.
and so many people knock the state. The state has been tremendous supporters. They sanctioned it. That's
Yeah.
what the politics sometimes. I'm like, hey,
I
look
do
at the
think there
positive.
needs to be more women in the state, and more of these
Yeah,
girls as they're graduating do need to be
we need
encouraged
to
in taking
encourage it.
those leadership roles in the
Missy. So
wrestling.
you've got Megan with Missy Wrestling, that's Mississippi, and she's real big on wanting to build the infrastructure in Mississippi. And that's a conversation we've had with what they're doing in Mississippi is getting more coaches, more refs, and encouraging girls from the bottom up through the process, saying, hey, when you leave the sport, like our Hall of Famer Randy Hott always says, always pay wrestling back. He's so big on that,
Yep.
Coach Randy. And that's that idea of start telling them when you graduate, find your next step.
Yeah. So I'm assuming USA Wrestling is probably the largest
Yeah,
organization. Do you have any AAU wrestling there?
we do. We still do have some AAU, and they're both. They've got different goals, but they're
Yep.
tremendous.
Yep.
Anybody that's putting on wrestling events, let's support them.
Yep. So both of those organizations, I'm more part of the AAU in Iowa, but both organizations we brought in for our AAU state tournament, which was a 18 mat 1600 girl tournament.
Oh
Uh,
wow!
we
That's
brought in
great.
7 brand new female officials to mentor with the older officials, and
Seasoned
they work
refs.
the
Yeah.
mats. Yep, they work the mats, and there's some of them that did a much better job than some of our older, some of our officials that are kind of timing out. There's
Yeah.
you know, so they did a
They're
great
not hitting
job.
that
So
flip over pin the way they used to, huh?
yes, and in order to coach at Fargo for USA Wrestling, you have to officiate local tournaments and their state tournament. You have to be one of the three, three officials. So they also there's a lot of female coaches in Iowa now, and that's something else that we've helped build. Is both organizations have done a good job about, like, we just ran a tournament I told you on the phone, Twin River Duels 100 all girls tournaments. We had 40 Team Iowa was 31 teams. We had 47
Wow.
That's
we had
great.
47
Amazing.
female coaches on the mat. And we did that by contacting the colleges. Iowa also has 23 colleges, universities. We hit some from every level. JUCO, D3, D2, D1. We have two D1s. We have one D2, a ton of D3s, 4 or 5 NAIs. So we call each of those coaches and said, who are you going to send us? And we pay for their card. We pay for a place for them to stay. So, we put probably there was close to 70 female coaches on the mat
Wow.
in that.
That's
So, but it
wonderful.
takes outside organizations in order to do that. As a coach at this school, and you couldn't do that. But you could encourage your girls to do that. So that's something that I would, when I'd like to use this as a platform maybe to help Alabama and help us see the differences and where we can help each other out.
Yeah, man, and
Um,
we got to get these D3 schools go back. Now we got a tremendous D3 program, Huntington,
yep.
that tremendous college is doing a great job, man. They got boys and girls. Montevallo, we got D2 that is a boys team. I would love to see them get girls. I really wanted to see them start with girls, but they've at least got the boys going. The SEC canceled all collegiate wrestling in the early 80s. It's a shame
Yep.
because the club teams are growing again in our
Mhm.
state. We don't have those NAIA D3. That would help our state grow tremendously.
Yeah.
Well, you said you're a 95 college graduate, is that right?
No,
Or
I'm a
no,
high school
high school.
1995
So
graduate.
yeah, I
Yeah.
was I was 89 graduate. And so when I went to college, uh, Title IX was used to cut wrestling.
Yep.
That was
Yep.
that the wrestling was dying at that time. The idea that, oh well, we'll just cut this, and for whatever reason, I don't know where it started. Well, it probably started with the sanctioning and getting things going, but the mats are already down on the floor. They already have
Yeah.
coaching. They just need to hire maybe one more coach to get started. And now we're using Title IX in order to grow the sport of wrestling, and it's working on both. Like you said, it's working on both ends of the spectrum there. So that's amazing stuff. What were some of the challenges? Like you said, the state had certain levels that you had to meet. What levels did you have to meet in order to get sanctioned in the state of Alabama?
I'll let Wendy because she ran those numbers, man.
So it started with, and I don't know exactly where this came from, but I was told that the first criteria was 75 schools had to commit. They sent out a
Okay.
thing,
Declare.
and the schools had to declare that they would add wrestling. And they claimed that that happened. They had 75 schools commit, and everybody was under the impression that, oh, that meant it would get sanctioned. No, that was just 75 schools that said we would consider adding girls wrestling. So you had tons of people that got up in arms. We have 75 schools. We have 75 schools. But most of those schools weren't actually starting a girls program. They were just saying, oh, yeah, 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 girls wrestling,
Or
great,
might have
whatever.
one, maybe two
Yep.
girls.
So when I went to talk to the state, the first thing they said is we need to know the status of girls wrestling. They didn't have any of the numbers. So they said the very first thing, we need to see numbers. So Tisha and I, we sat down with track wrestling, and for a week, that is all we did was go through and find
Every
these
single
schools.
team, every single
So
Yep.
tournament.
then we realized, yes, there were 75 schools, but over 50 of them had 5 or less girls. So they didn't have teams. So we went back and told the state, yes, there are 75 schools. There's more that would like to start it, but they don't have enough to be considered a team because they wanted to see official
And
teams,
they were
6
front
girls.
loaded at the 7A. We did that 1A through 5A was lacking severely.
Yeah, there was
6A and
almost
7A.
nothing at 1 through 5A, and you didn't have hardly any of the private schools. You didn't have any of those really. It was us and I think like 2 other schools. And So they said we need to see the numbers grow. So they said we need to see, they didn't really give us a specific number. They said they just needed growth. So they said we need to see more teams, meaning 6 or more girls. They said we need to see more matches, more tournaments on the books, not these, well, let's throw these 2 girls because they're
close enough.
So they needed matches that went on the books. They didn't just
tournaments
need
in track. They needed dual matches in track.
So that's the big thing. They said we need the duels, we need things in track wrestling. We need to know that it's happening. We can't just take somebody's word of, oh yeah, we wrestled 5 girls this weekend. So that became the big challenge. Is a lot of the tournaments and stuff, it was, well, we need the mats. We don't have time to run girls.
There were going to be a few girls tournaments, but we were a small Catholic school. So we couldn't divide up and I send Wendy here and I go here. We couldn't. So what the state gave us the idea, they said pressure tournaments to create a girls division. Take one match and let's create a girls division. So we would call tournaments, hey, we want to bring our boys, but we got girls. And matter of fact, I got 4 other teams that want to come too, and they got girls. If you will give us one mat, we will run the girls tournament. We'll put it into track.
And it was always a lot of matches. I mean, we say tournament, but sometimes it was less than 20
girls in a bracket.
20 matches. You had 2 to 3 girls in a bracket.
But it went on the books. And
so
total girls match.
When we got to the end of that season, the state was like, great, y'all grew this year, but it's not enough to be sanctioned. You show growth, but we need more growth. So that next year is when we got on the phone and we started calling principals, athletic directors. We had girls calling us saying, I want to wrestle and my school's not letting me.
And listen, until you've talked to an Alabama athletic director, wrestling. Girls wrestling, gals wrestling.
Yeah,
we ain't got those kind of girls.
Good conversations.
We're from the state, so we could do that accent and we can make fun of it. But we had that conversation a lot.
There was a lot of that. There was a lot of, oh, well, we don't have those kind of girls.
Those kind of girls at our school.
You do, because they're calling me wanting to wrestle. So
we had girls from pageants and dance, and that's one of the things that we think of this big tough girl. One of the things that Wendy, you always talk about, why has it got to be the either or?
Yeah.
That's
why I love the fact that so many of girls in wrestling now are trying to hit home the point that you can be tough and pretty. You know, because I think for so long there was a stigma that everybody thinks of like a big, gruff, thick, heavyweight girl, and they think that's the only girl that can wrestle. But it was getting out there and telling these girls, no, you can wrestle. And the big thing was letting them know that they would be wrestling a girl their same size. We had a lot of girls when they came in that didn't realize they would have to wrestle. And a lot of it is that girls didn't know. So that was what we did next. We started advocating at these schools. We started telling, okay, you have one girl at your school that wants to wrestle. You got to go recruit. You've got to find girls to build you a team. The state's not going to listen until you build it. So, like I said, it took giving them the numbers over a course of 3 years before they were like, y'all are making progress. Y'all are getting there.
We have a mat. So we bought the mat off the truck of Super 32s from Easy Flex, tremendous company, by the way. And we bought it off the truck, and we drove that mat across the state of Alabama to every small 4A school so they could have a
because we were like, okay,
one mat.
If we bring the mat, can the girls wrestle? Like, will you have a girls division if we bring the mat? So we would drive our mat.
And we drove that mat everywhere across Alabama, and that became the girls' mat that they wrestled on. And a lot of schools let us do it the cool way. We brought the LEDs, so the boys would have their boring mats, and the girls would have the cool LEDs. And that
was the biggest thing, is get a point to people that it had to grow. It was not going to get. I think a lot of people just thought, oh, we want it sanctioned. It should be sanctioned. They didn't really think about it.
Mean growth. And just because you get sanctioned doesn't mean it's over. We still see that there's so much growth, because we're even in the off season right now. We've got tournaments that don't have enough in the off season. So that lets me know that we're not getting the message from in season wrestlers to the clubs, and there's not enough synergy happening between the two to off season.
And you still have girls that face they want to wrestle, but you have a lot of these male coaches that, oh, I'm going to go hard, and if they stick with it, then they can be on the team, and they intentionally try to run them off. And Sadly, they do that in the clubs around here too. And it's that, well, if the girls want to stay, they've got to be as tough as the boys. So you've got a lot of girls that, I'm not saying quit or give up, but they feel like they don't belong, they shouldn't be there. And I think you lose a lot of girls to that too. You know,
That is
so,
not that is not unique to Alabama.
oh, I'm sure it's
I
not.
was a huge wrestling state. I mean, we that's if we're known for anything, it's corn and wrestling, right? I mean, that's all we got, you know. So, but that happens and I'm in Northwest Iowa, which is the least populated area of the state. So, the conference that I am in, there's actually only 3 schools that support girls wrestling out of the 10, and we've co-opted, so there's able to allow those kids to go. Because as far as I understand with Title IX, if you have a boys program, you have to have a viable option for a girl to wrestle that wants to wrestle. And that's how my understanding of Title IX. So it doesn't have to necessarily be at your school, but it has to be within, a reasonable driving distance and co-opt. But I have superintendents. I have a superintendent that I went to school with and friends with that I know doesn't want girls wrestling at his school because he's told me that. These things happen all over. And you're right, girls get tired of it because they want a seat at this table, but
Yep.
maybe we just need a new table. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, and what's wrong with changing the framework for growth? I think that like I said, as wrestlers, we have our own dogmatic things that we say, and we're caught in these loops, and we can't see the forest through the trees. If we can just step out of the loop and look, I mean, and we do the same thing with technique. We get on a roll with what technique we teach, and then somebody comes along and they're doing something different, and some coaches are going, "Hey, what's happening over there?" We see the style change on the mat. Well, we need the same in the methodology for practices. If we want to true grow wrestling, then there might be framework things we have to change. Of
Well, I
course,
think a lot of it is the mindset. You've got so many still that are in the mindset that, well, girls aren't tough enough to wrestle and things like that that you have to battle too. And you've got so many of these boys in the room that a lot of it is getting passed on from the male coaches and dads and whatever that, well, if they want to wrestle and they really want to be here, they'll stick it out and they'll have to be as tough as the boys are. And that's that I hear from a lot of the girls since we've started making the movie. They're like, why is it I have to be as tough as a boy? Why can't I be tough and strong as a girl? Why is this
Yep.
standard for being a wrestler? Why can't it be the female standard for being a wrestler? Why has a girl got to be the male
like the
equivalent on the
pictures with the
mat?
change you were talking about, and everything is a flex. And why can't
Yep.
a girl just take a picture, for their booklet?
Their senior photos and
Yeah,
stuff, and they're
man.
sitting
Well,
here putting the big chains on the girls and all
yeah.
that. It's like,
It's not that they
you
can't
know,
be cool, but does that fit every girl? I mean, is that
yeah,
Yeah. Well, I think that, and I don't know the numbers of Alabama. Wrestling has really done a lot. The growth in Iowa has been great. But what I've seen, the coolest part of this is these officials that were going to retire. They stuck around because everywhere is an official shortage. They stuck around and they love officiating for the girls' matches
yeah?
yeah,
because the sportsmanship is so much better. They just, there's a different emotion, there's a different feel to the sport of girls wrestling. First real girls sport that I paid attention to, quite honestly.
Yeah.
So, but and then the coaches, a lot of times it was, hey, the guy that just retired 2 years ago, you think we can get him back to coach the girls
Yeah.
or this, that,
And
the
we're
emotion of this
seeing that
sport.
second life of that coach. We're seeing that down here
Yes,
too.
yeah,
The Hall
and
of Famers are getting back on the mats.
I just had a podcast yesterday with a college coach, and he, Illinois, very good wrestler, wrestled some D2 school, did a really, he was a very good wrestler. Ends up coaching both at a community college in Iowa, and then they grew enough that he had to switch. He's like, I'll never coach boys again, never. He's like, there's no way. And I'm the same way. I coached 1999 was when I got my coaching authorization in Iowa. I coached up until 10 years ago, boys. A girl walked into my club and started coaching her that day. And, it evolved over time. I would never coach another boys team ever. It's not going to happen because it's just not
Girls
not the
wrestling
same.
is fun. I loved coaching boys, but girls wrestling, it's fun, it's exciting, it's different, and it does have a different energy. And the parents, man, we don't even talk about how much the parents are into it. There's
Yep.
dads that are so supportive of their daughters. There's moms that are on fire about it, and there's just something about the energy in the room. You've got to be there live to
Well,
feel
that's
it.
like
And
a few days ago we were doing a reading with some of
some of our cast
some of
members.
the girls from the movie, and one of them's mom was sitting in the room, and she was so heartbroken because her daughter's a senior and she just finished her senior season, and she was literally sitting there with tears. She's like, "I'm gonna miss it so much." I mean,
Yep.
the parents just get what they love it so much too, and she was like, "I wish she had eligibility left. I would have held her back
Yeah.
so she could wrestle
Some
another
of these
year." And it
parents
was,
are the biggest supporters of our sport, and we don't even always go to them for knowledge and ideas. And that's
Yep.
something we should be a little bit more talking to the parents. Hey, your daughter graduated after 4 years. What's something you could teach me about my program to improve
not all
next
parents though.
next grade? Not
Yeah.
not
No,
all parents. There's
yeah,
some we've had in our past, And
we
when you're a
take
coach,
input.
you're loved and hated. You're loved and hated by all.
Yeah. Yeah. We take input from parents, but we filter that input.
Yes.
Now I got a question for Wendy, coaching
All right.
girls.
Sure.
And this is something that I noticed and I have had some very good athletes in the 4 years of sanctioning. I think we've had 20 state qualifiers. I put at least two kids on the podium every year, two state champions, good kids. Not one of them. I think their
Oh,
confidence could be torn apart tomorrow. And I with boys, and
yeah.
tell me if I'm wrong. You've been on a wrestling team, TJ, and there's always that one kid that doesn't know anything about wrestling, but doesn't know that he doesn't know anything about wrestling, and he goes out with this confidence of I don't know how. I mean, I've seen this over and over and over as a coach. Goes out with some crazy thought that he's a great wrestler. They end up winning some matches, right? And then they get a bigger ego, bigger ego. But girls can be a state champion, and then their confidence can be gone tomorrow. Why
Oh
is
yeah.
I don't understand why that happens. I think I'm trying to figure this out as a coach, as to help these girls. But then on the flip side of that, I've never seen girls get more confident than wrestling. And I don't know
Yeah.
if that's your
The
experience. What's your
the sport
experience in that?
does well, the sport does grow girls' confidence. I think because it proves to them that they're capable of something they didn't think they would be capable of. But innately, girls' confidence can be very fragile. I mean, there's a million and one things like, and this is the one I always tell TJ, cutting weight for a girl, which I don't agree with kids cutting. I'm very much a they should, wrestle as close to the regular way as possible, but it's different for a girl can very easily and very oh, are we back?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
back. You're back.
Um,
I'll
okay.
play editor with this stuff. It'll be all right.
But girls very innately internalize a lot more. They get very much into the am I letting my team down? The weight thing can become very internalized and a physical thing too, because let's face it, a singlet is very close to a bathing suit. So you have girls
Yep.
that get very self conscious about what they look like in their singlet. You have girls and the harassment they face from boys. So there's all these things that are very much a pressure on the girls. And very much they feel like if they don't win that match, they're letting their team down, they're letting their dad down, because the father daughter relationship in wrestling plays a lot into it too. I had several girls that I think initially they were wrestling because they felt it would give them a commonality to their dad. And I had some that were doing it almost to prove the world wrong,
Or to
you
prove your
know,
dad wrong.
or prove their dad wrong. And it becomes very much it's not their own confidence, it's what the world sees them as. Does the world see them as tough? Does the world see them as confident? And that loss on the mat, oh my God, I'm not confident about it anymore, because once you've lost, you can lose again. And I think all those things compound it for a girl, because I would have girls that they'd be great going into the day, but the second they took that first loss, a lot of them couldn't battle back from it, and they would end up losing the next one, not because the girl was better than them, but because they mentally couldn't come back from that.
Yeah.
So I
I've had
think,
those conversations. Yes.
It's just
yeah.
crazy. We say
Yeah, I've had one. We had a girl at a tournament. She was wrestling amazing. She was doing a great job. She lost one match. Her next match was a girl she had beaten 100 times, and she just couldn't do it. She was out for the day mentally, and she lost to a girl I don't think she had ever lost to her before because
Yep.
she couldn't mentally get back in the game because that loss had just shredded her.
and we all say that same thing. Wrestling is 90% mental, but how many coaches actually take the time to coach that 90%? You know,
Yeah.
we all say that it's only 10% physical, it's 90% mental, yet we don't take the time. And when it comes to girls, if you told me right now, TJ, I want you to go coach a girl on how to be 90% mental, what I would do be like, hey, I
Yeah.
need you
No,
to, you know,
you're 100%
because
right.
I'm with you. I'm like, because I want to give them every boy example of fight back harder. Yeah, you're going to do great. You're going to win the next one. You know, I've got a million of these, but it's just different.
It's very different for a girl.
Girls don't always respond to these messages that we're used to giving to our guy wrestlers. It doesn't always work with girls. Sometimes they've got to be communicated with differently. And when we're giving these same, what we feel are the pep talks, they're not resonating. You know, we're just
Yep.
saying words and it's not resonating. Oh, that's all right, Tiger. You're going to get him in the next one. Hey, listen, we all drop a mat. You know, we have 1,000 that we say.
Yeah.
And sometimes,
And I think even though it is an individual sport and wrestling is very individual, you have a lot of girls that are so afraid of who they're letting down with that
Mm-hmm.
loss. Are they letting down their coach? Are they letting down their parents? Are they letting down their team? Is their team going to hate them because they lost a match? So I think girls, and then of course you have them beating themselves up over it, over, oh my God, that mean I'm not good at this. And I think all those factors, and I mean, I'm sure boys deal with that to a degree, but a lot of y'all are, oh, I lost one, let me go kick butt in the next one. And for a girl, you're so worried about who you're letting down, who, is going to think what after you've lost that match, that it's hard to find that and dig deep to get back out there.
Yeah. I use a lot of uh, I'm not the same coach I was when I came out of college. I will tell you that. In my 50s and being a dad, parent, and a grandpa of girls also has probably changed the way I look at things too. But I start the beginning of the year, and they hear this over and over again. Uh, a loss is the only way we get better. So
yeah, a
we
loss
need
is
to
a
reflect
lesson.
on that.
Yeah.
And if you lose, it's okay because the sun comes up tomorrow. Your mom and dad are still going to love you. I'm still going to love you, and we're going to get through this. And all that every time they hear that, I think that helps them. Um, Very positive. When we started when I was going through wrestling, it was how tear them down to build them back up. And I don't. You're right. I don't think that works with girls, and I've learned that over. Oh, we froze. We may have froze again
Freeze up.
slightly. Uh, but yeah, we
Yeah, we're
just
back.
yeah, we're
Yep.
back now. That idea of tearing someone down to build them up, I don't even think it works with boys, honestly. I think that we're
Oh.
causing more damage than we are anything else. You can be positive. You can still give them positives and help them come back the other, you have to give them
Man, I
honesty.
heard a guy talk
Well,
did
Yeah.
well. Some opponent does a great job. And sometimes the opponent beats us, and we should never take out away from the opponent. Hey, I think it was Jordan Burroughs that had this on his page the other day. He's like, you know what? That guy shot a good double leg, and he took you down, and that's how he won the match. Could stop that guy's double leg, but we're going to work harder, and maybe next time that we work hard enough, we'll be able to stop that double leg. I think that's a good message versus how'd you let that kid take you down 3 times?
well, something else, and I love Alexandria Gaudet,
Oh,
and she
Yep.
is absolutely phenomenal. And she had a TikTok the other day that I absolutely loved, and she said, if the only reason you're wrestling is for the hand raises on the mat, you're going to have a really miserable time because there is so much more to be gained from wrestling than just the wins. Because there's going to be times where you take those hard losses and some of them are really crushing. So I think a good thing with girls is to emphasize all the other things that they are gaining from wrestling. All the things, the strength that they're gaining, the capability that they're gaining, all of those things I think have to be emphasized, not just the hand raises, because let's face it, for a long time when you're starting, those hand raises are few and far between. So if that's the only reason you're on the mat, you're not going to get a whole lot of those hand raises when you're getting started. But I think that's another thing, and I think that goes for girls and boys. You have to emphasize more than the hand raises. Your self worth and your value on the mat is not just from the hand raises, because yeah, you're going to take hard losses. You're going to take those matches that you think there's absolutely no way you can lose, and sometimes you're going to lose. So I I just loved that clip when she said that the other day, that if the only reason you're there for the hand raises, you're going to have a whole
And
lot
we're
of
seeing our
disappointment.
female leaders put up excellent clips. Helen
Oh
Maroulis
yeah.
putting
Yeah.
some excellent.
Oh,
Oh man, I love. Have you watched her teach? Man, and
oh
as a
yeah.
professor, I love the methodology, and I love watching her style when she teaches.
She's a good dancer too.
Yeah, she said,
Yes.
"Hey, dancers make the best wrestlers. Wrestlers make the best dancers." But I love watching her style when she teaches. There's something. She's descriptive. She takes time and she recognizes and engages the audience. One of the issues that we do when we start coaching and wrestling, we want the elbows here. Hey, we're hitting the duck under. We want our head here. We've got so much. Lower your level. We've got so many things we're saying, and we're going through processes.
But you're not drawing the
is
kids
that
into
we're
it.
processing and we're calculating and we're repeating everything we've been told. Well, don't do this, but do this. Don't do that, but do this. And what we're seeing out of Helen Maroulis is she's taking the time to engage the audience. And that's one of the biggest things that I love. She'll get in a position. Hey, do you see where I am? Do you understand why I'm here? Does this make sense? And she Q&As through every step. And I just thought that was so interesting. Yeah. And her approach is calm. Man, I'm so used to the coaches that, but her approach, and especially with the youth kids and the youth girls, it's so calming that they're absorbing. And I just watched that clip.
But she keeps them very much engaged. She asks them questions. And Kennedy Blade and Alexandria Gaudet, there's just a different style of instruction from the women than there is the men. The men are, well, if you don't do this, you're a stupid wrestler or something like that. And instead, the women are out there. Do you understand this? Does this make sense? Do you see what I'm doing? Instead of just yelling at them.
It's not even, it's not always the insult and it's not always the yelling. As guys, we're almost a lot of times
condescending.
If you don't do this, you're going to get taken down. And that's the way that we say it. If you don't lower your level, you don't have a good setup, lower your level and shoot, and you just shoot from space, you're going to get taken down. Why would you do that? And that's kind of our mentality of if you don't do these things, you're going to lose. Girls approach it more of,
if I'm right here and this person does this, what will be the outcome? So I think
they make people process.
Yeah, and they draw kids into it. If I'm here, what are my options? So a lot of their clips, if you notice, they're getting the kids to feedback and interact with them. And a lot of the men, it's let me show you what to do, and you sit there and watch me do it. And isn't what I'm doing great?
We have the system. The systems work for 30 years, and we created our Wall of Fame. And this is what the Wall of Fame did, so you should do the same. And so,
do you know Emma Randall? Have you ever met Emma Randall? She coaches
at no.
She's the Columbia University coach.
Oh wow!
She spent she was part of. She's coached in the last three Olympics on the women's side. She was at the Olympic Training Center with Steiner. They created a position for her, but I've been at a couple clinics with her where we've become friends. She's done the podcast before too.
Cool.
She was at Beat the Streets, New York. And this is how I've tried to take from her, because she's probably the best coach I've ever been around in my lifetime as far as understanding how to do things. So Beat the Streets, New York, she had to go to a different borough every day and teach this, so she would have the lesson. And she's like, well, I'm gonna show them this. And so she in her mind thinks, what are the catch points on this move? And she'd go there, and those wouldn't be the points that someone wouldn't get. So then she'd have to go home, and then she'd have to come up with the strategies to change these two things and have a drill. Everything she does is, if there's there's a drill for every there might be 6 drills for doing a high seat, right? It's crazy how she does things, but that she developed this by going to a different borough every day and someone would have a different question. So then she'd develop a different drill. And she'd go to the 5 different boroughs every day for years. She did this and
That's
developed
amazing.
some of the best coaching I've ever seen. Super intelligent person, and she's also at the New York RTC too. So she works with
Oh, cool.
some of the most incredible coaches and wrestlers that meets there, and just all these people. But her process of coaching changed the way I think about coaching. And she's
Yeah.
probably in her 30s now, but and I'm 55 this year, so her ideas changed this old guy's way of thinking. The first clinic the first clinic I was at with her, when she started talking about it's not about wins and losses, even at the Olympic level, even at the world team level, we don't talk about wins and losses. We talk about improvement. And
Yeah.
Oh man,
that's all it is. And
that's
when I started thinking about that, I was like, man, yeah, you can win a match and you didn't get anything from it because that person, you did something bad, but you still won. That's
yeah.
not good. We can't, so it's hard. So learning from losses is something I really picked up from being around female coaches. So yeah, I think we could talk about wrestling and coaching and things all day.
Since we
We're
love the
one
sport, man.
The girls should